Hi, my name is Livan Lezcano, and this is my immigrant story. My story of migration is not entirely dissimilar to the story of migration of countless other Latin American immigrants who have made South Florida their home. My story of migration starts off with my father, seen here second to the right. He, a Cuban of Spanish ancestry, was born in 1969 in Pinal del Rio, Cuba. Born a decade after the Cuban Revolution, my father, like countless other Cuban exiles, migrated to Miami from Cuba in 1993. This time on the island was referred to by the Cuban government as the Special Period. The Soviet Union had just collapsed and could no longer help aid and sustain the Cuban economy. The communist island had no food and no resources to keep its people fed or offer them any type of political or economic stability. And at 24, my father, along with 10 other people, decided that the situation on the island was so bad that he'd rather die on a raft trying to reach the United States than continue living on an island that repressed his freedom of speech and, as he saw it, offered him no real future. He arrived in Miami in 1993. He had the benefit of being part of a larger Cuban exiled community, of those being majority Spanish speaking and of Spanish descent. It made it easier for him to get a job and eventually a loan for a house. By this time in the 1990s, the Cuban community has solidified its majority in Miami-Dade County. Along with holding most of the economic and political power in Miami-Dade, Cuban immigrants did not have to go through the same hurdles that other Latin American immigrants had to. The United States government's opposition to communism made it easier for Cuban immigrants, as the 1966 Cuban Adjustment Act would prioritize Cuban immigrants and give them permanent residency if they made it to the United States. My mother's migration story could not be any more dissimilar from my father's, and it starts off in 1989 in Lima, Peru. Peru during this time was not politically stable and had little economic opportunities for its citizens. During this time, narco-terrorism and violence was rampant across South America. Another cause of violence at this time was the guerrilla warfare group known as the Shining Path. Their main goal was to destabilize the Peruvian government and establish a communist government in its place. They would indoctrinate the peasants and arm them with weapons in order to fight back against the government. They would do this by any means, including killing, kidnapping, and torturing people who were politically opposed to them. Seeing all this political instability and violence, my mother, along with a caravan of other Peruvian nationals, would embark on a journey north. Born in 1970, a Peruvian woman of indigenous heritage decided that it was no longer beneficial to her to continue to live in fear. She wanted a better life for herself and her family, and at age 18 decided to make the trip. A trip that would see her travel across 10 Latin American countries by train and even by walking, eventually reaching Mexico in the year 1989. Not everybody in her group would make it across, however, but she would, eventually reaching Los Angeles, California in the year 1990. She, however, would have to live in the shadows as an undocumented worker. She, along with so many other undocumented workers, had no right to protest for pay and no one to complain to if she felt like she was being mistreated. She, like my father, was fleeing her home country in search of a better life. But unlike my father, American politics were not in her favor. She would eventually be given residency in the year 1996. Both my parents would eventually settle in Miami, Florida, and have both me and my sister. They would eventually be reunited with their parents here in the United States. Understanding my family's story of migration, I am eternally grateful for the sacrifices and literal pain that they had to endure to get here. It motivates me present day to be the best that I can be for them and grateful for all that I have.